Rapunzel. Once upon a time, there lived a man and his wife. They had all that they wanted in the world except for one thing. For many years, they longed to have a child whom they could love. Yet no baby was born to them. This is to teach the children that a child or anything in creation comes from intention engaging with action. They have to make a baby. It won't happen. You have to create things through intention with action, not just thinking about it. The engagement with the material world, your psyche's engagement with the material world brings things into reality. This is the precursor of the child's psyche being born, to tell them that these are the outside cosmic and natural forces that have brought you, the baby, into reality. At the back of the house was a window which looked over a beautiful garden, full of lovely flowers and fine vegetables. The garden was surrounded by a high wall. No one ever tried to climb the wall, for the garden belonged to a witch who was feared by everybody. The witch's garden represents the results of consciousness and the interplay between psyche and reality. She had a garden on the other side of the wall, and she was a witch because she had the garden because she grew it. She planted the flowers, she worked with nature. The child is now learning that the symbolism of the witch is magic. I don't talk about what magic really is. Magic is bringing reality into intention into reality. And the child is now learning the witch has the flowers and the beautiful garden because the witch did this. She made the garden where the couple hadn't made the baby, they just wished for the baby. One day the wife, doesn't have a childless wife, stood at the window looking down into the garden. In one of the vegetable beds she saw some fresh green salad. It looked so tempting that she longed to eat some. This is to teach the child that you cannot take another person's industry, that you must create for yourself. Every day that followed, she looked out the window at the fresh green salad. The more she looked at it, the more she longed to eat it. Soon she did not want to eat anything else. This is to teach the child that envy is no substitute for direct engagement of relative and absolute forces. You cannot take somebody else's energy or labors or the product of their hard work because it will backfire on you. And that's envy. That's the root of envy. You are not doing it, but you want to take it from somebody else. She grew thin and pale because she knew she could not have the salad. Her husband grew worried when he saw how thin she had become. "What's the matter with you, dear?" he asked. His wife pointed to the fresh green salad in the witch's garden. "Ah," he sighed, "if I cannot eat some of the salad," she sighed, sorry, "if I cannot eat some of the salad, I shall surely die." This is manipulation. We're being taught here that she's not doing it. She's now manipulating another person to do it, the husband, through guilt. "I will die if you do not give me the salad." "Rather than let you die," the man replied, "I shall climb into the wall of the witch's garden and bring you the salad." This is to teach you that an element of compromise is sometimes needed in life. You cannot have it all. The man is trying to make a compromise for his wife who wants the salad. She does not want to earn the salad. She does not want to get the salad. She wants to take it from somebody else. The man waited until twilight, then climbed over the wall and into the witch's garden. Then he quickly gathered a handful of salad and scrambled back all over the wall. The aspect here of twilight is very important and wall. Twilight represents the going into the shadow, into the dark side. He's stealing. He's stealing. He's not creating, he's stealing. His shadow has now been released. It's gone over the wall. His wife sat down at once and ate the salad. It tasted even better than she had imagined. It tasted so good that by the next day she was longing for more salad. She got something for nothing. So once more the husband felt that he must climb over the wall and to fetch it for her. So there's a denial of the psyche here for pathological determinants, meaning that rather than work on myself to create these things, we're now becoming pathological. Parasites. We're now become, we got away with it once, we'll try and keep getting away with it again. Waiting until twilight once again, the man clambered over the wall and lowered himself into the garden. At his feet he touched the ground. He nearly fell down with a fright, for there stood the witch in front of him. The shadow play, is a risky game. When you engage with the dark side, understand the whole thing, the Saturnian cult, when you engage with the dark side, you're on the knife edge. This man went into the dark side, he went on a pathological drive of it because of the manipulation of his wife to steal this stuff. And now he's encountered truly the results of this. How dare you come into my garden, she shouted angrily, and how dare you steal my salad? Meaning he went into the psyche, the darkness, the dark aspects of his nature without actually having worked on himself. So he's now unprepared to deal with the shock of reality, that he's a thief. It was for my wife, replied the poor man. He's telling the truth. She longed so much for the salad that if she could not eat it, she would have pined away and died. So the witch now represents natural law. Natural law is that if you go against anything in nature, the natural way of things, it will blow up in your face. If you try to jump off a building and fly, you will crash. So this child's now being taught about there's a price to pay for things here. When the witch heard the man's tale, she lost her anger and took pity. If what you say is true, she said, I will let you take as much salad as you wish, if you promise me one thing. When your wife has a child, you must give it up to me, Karma. I shall treat it well and look after it like a mother. The poor man was so frightened that he agreed, that he quickly gathered an armful of salad and smuggled back to his wife. This represents the understanding of the relative things, like the dark side. The witch realized, well, it's not really his fault. He was kind of guilty. She felt sorry for him. And so the dark side made a compromise. Sometime later, a beautiful baby girl was born to the man and the wife. That very same day, the witch appeared. You can't escape natural law. She reminded the man of the promise, and she took the child away with her. The witch named the baby Rapunzel. As the child grew, she became the most beautiful girl in the world. Now we have the birth of the infant ego. We've now gone from the forces of nature behind the birth of Rapunzel, and now the child who's reading this story is now in the story. You become Rapunzel. Okay? So you're now into this. When I talked about the alchemical mountain and the tarot last week, we have the solar and the lunar aspects. The solar begins the birth of the infant ego. Now the child listening to this is now projected. Rapunzel becomes an archetype of the child reading this book. When Rapunzel was 12 years old, puberty, the witch kept her shut up in a tower in the forest. The tower had neither a door nor a staircase. Right at the very top there was one small window. When the witch came to visit Rapunzel, she stood at the foot of the tower and cried, Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair. The tower represents protection and aloofness and innocence from the realities of the adult world. The child is locked up in a tower, living in fairy tale land, is not aware. There's a whole world outside itself, but it's about to become aware that as puberty happens, they're going to have to make their own way in the world. And that's what these represents. And the hair represents an umbilical cord with being taken care of. That umbilical cord has to be snapped in order for Rapunzel to grow. Rapunzel had wonderful long fine hair, the colour of gold. Whenever she heard the voice of the witch, she threw down her long plaited hair and out of the window. It was so long that it fell right to the ground. The witch would catch hold of the hair as if it was a rope, and then she would climb to the wall of the tower and in the window. The hair represents the unavoidable exchange with the adult world. She may be living in a tower, the child may be living alone, aloof, protected by their parents, but there's an unavoidable engagement with reality that has to take place. No child is adult. The child is being taught through this story, you're never ever independent. When Rapunzel had been in the tower a few years, it happened that a prince rode through the forest. As he passed by the tower, he heard the sound of someone singing. The singing was so lovely that the prince stopped to listen. The song came from the top of the tower. It was Rapunzel singing to herself. The recognition of duality, male, female. The tower could also represent the male phallus at this point as well for the prince. But this is puberty. We're in puberty now. We're growing. So we have this is the point in life where you, at this 12-year-old, you would have in all the cultures things like that, a mitzvah, confirmation. This is no longer a child. You're engaging with the adult world. The prince wanted to go into the tower to find the singer. He looked at the door but could not find one. He sadly rode home. Yet the prince could not forget the sweet song as he longed to see the singer. Every day he returned to the forest and stood by the tower, listening to Rapunzel singing. The song that she was singing was the beginning of the development of her social personality. She was reaching out through her singing. It just represents her engagement with the rest of the world. So the child was learning that, like, if I have something to say, people will listen. One day, when the prince was standing behind a tree, the witch came into the tower and heard her say, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." Immediately a long, thick plaid of gold hair fell to the ground. The prince watched amazed as the witch climbed the tower and in the window. So here we have to be, the child's being made a personal compromise to adapt to the reality of others. He's now figured the child will have to understand, as it goes through life, it will have to compromise for other people's existence, not just how you live. But this is also a double-edged sword, because this is where the child learns to exploit others. And if they're a pathological child, they exploit another person's weaknesses. Where if they're a caring person, they help work with that person to engage with them. So these are very deep things, these fairy tales. There's a phenomenal book by Bruno Bettelheim. He wrote about the Freudian psychologist, and he went through the history of all the European fairy tales, and all about this, the ones that survived. If that is the ladder by which to enter the tower, then I will try it too, said the prince. The next day at twilight, very important, the prince stood at the foot of the tower and cried, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." Immediately, the plait of hair came down, tumbling down, and the prince climbed up. This is again social compromise, but there's probably a thing that Rapunzel knew it wasn't a witch, because it would have been a different voice. So she's now ready to engage with mystery. She's taking chances. The child, we must understand, this is teaching the child that sometimes you must take risks. If something is a bit different, you must go for it. Rapunzel was surprised and rather afraid, and she found that a man had climbed up the room into her tower. This would be the development of puberty, the aware of sexual development. As for the prince, when she saw the beauty of Rapunzel, he was overjoyed. He talked kindly to her, and soon she lost her fear. She was told how for many months he stood outside the tower every day listening to her sweet singing. It's the end of innocence now. The end of childhood innocence is over. She's now got the hots for this fella. The prince asked Rapunzel if he might come and visit again. She replied, "Come see me each evening when the witch comes out only when the witch leaves during the day." So for many months the prince visited Rapunzel every evening, and they grew to love each other. After a while the prince asked Rapunzel to marry him, and she replied, "I will gladly do so." Then they talked together how Rapunzel could get out of the tower. This is a maturing of the independence and also temptation. Temptation is what's bringing her out into the world and giving her experience. And this is why I said earlier on, like, it's good for everyone to go nuts for a while, because that temptation is where you learn about yourself. You learn about the truth about the world. These children are being told this. But Rapunzel stayed in the tower, she'd never have anything. At last Rapunzel thought of a plan. "Every evening when you come to see me," said the prince, "bring a strand of silk. I shall weave the silk into a ladder, and from long enough to reach the ground I shall come down. Then you can carry me away on your horse." They agreed to the plan. Every night the prince brought about a fresh strand of silk, and every day Rapunzel wove it more and more into a ladder. This is using creativity and industry to build yourself, and also working with others to create things and manufacture things, so you can. No person is an island. During all this time, the witch knew nothing about the prince's visit to Rapunzel. Then one day, after the witch had climbed up the tower on a plait of hair, Rapunzel spoke without thinking. "How is it, good mother," she asked, "that you feel so much heavier than the prince?" You have to learn how to watch your mouth. See, you have to learn how to be careful. We can't say the first thing into our mouth because it might damage us. So we learn, this is the children learning how to be secret, protect their privacy, which unfortunately we don't have anymore because of all these reality TV shows, and every gobshite wants a camera in their house, watching everything do, and Facebook. We are now going into the lunar aspects. We've been in the solar aspects, and now we come to the lunar aspects. We are now in the tarot, the card in the middle, the Wheel of Fortune. That nothing is now easy. Sacrifice begins. "Oh, you wicked child," cried the witch. "I thought I had separated you from all the world." See, the witch represents herself, her own side. "I thought I represented you from all the world. Now I find that you have deceived me." In her anger, the witch seized a pair of scissors and cut off Rapunzel's beautiful hair. She then took the poor girl away to the desert, where she was left weeping. The cutting of the hair represents the final loss of childhood, innocence. She's been thrown out the door, just like when the mother pushes the kittens away after they've been weaned. This is what's happened there. You're on your own now. The same night the witch returned to the tower. She fastened Rapunzel's plait of hair to the hook of the window. The prince arrived and cried, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." Then the witch threw down the plait of hair out the window. The prince climbed up and found himself face to face, not with the beautiful Rapunzel, but the angry witch. Shit happens. Okay? The prince has been ambushed. And this tells you that failure of plans and things not working out for you is part of life. You can have all the best plans of the world and they can fall apart at the last minute. "Ah," she cried, the witch mocking him, "you have come to find your lady love, but she is gone and you will never see her again." The prince thought that Rapunzel was dead. In his sorrow, he jumped out of the high window of the tower and he fell to the ground. He was not killed, but his eyes were scratched out by the thorns on which he fell. Now remember when we did the tower thing last week, I spoke about the tower card. The tower has to fall, because it's only through coming back from disaster that you actually learn to grow as a person. The effect that those towers, when they fell, had on the human race. We've not been the same since. We've been in a state of psychic shock. We've been blinded by the thorns. And we're attacking, the people have died in the Middle East. It's turned the United States into a neurotic nation. The tower has fallen. And in many ways, particularly in the United States, they've now entered the dark night of the soul. And this is what he's telling me. The tower always has to fall. It always has to fall. The tower of man has to fall. For some time prior, the poor blind prince wandered sadly through the forest. His only food was the roots and berries he found there. He did not care about anything. His only thought was that he had lost his dear Rapunzel. At last he came to the desert where Rapunzel lived in sorrow. So she's been in the desert too, dealing with her own shit. In the distance he heard her singing. And he knew her voice at once. This is the dark night of the soul, like the moon card in the tarot when it was last year. The collapse of the ego. And what did the moon card have? It shows you two towers to walk through. And you keep going steady. Do not try to engage the predators on either side because they will savage you. You must keep walking on until morning because you're at your weakest. What Rapunzel's voice represents is the same thing as the star card in the tarot. The star card represents the coming up of the subconscious, the soul reaching inside yourself when you had a nervous breakdown in your life, you had a divorce. You find your song inside yourself. And that you try to bring that back up to the surface, and that's what saves you. That's what Rapunzel's voice was to the prince. The blind prince stumbled towards the voice he loved because that was what he was. That's what he was. It didn't matter he was a prince. It didn't matter that he was blind. He was looking for himself, his true state. As soon as she saw him, Rapunzel knew that this poor man in rags was her prince. She recognized him for what he was. We now have the duality of coming together, like Mercury, the resolution of the two poles of cognitive function, you can put it that way as well, the spirit and the material world. She was so glad to see him and so sad to find him blind that tears fell quickly. This is the aqua nostra I spoke about, the water that shone all around the star card. It's after the storm has happened and the rain has happened. There's pools of water, but they represent holy water, the cleansing of the soul. Fell upon immediately he could see all was well. He could see as well. Immediately he could see as well as ever he had done. So the archetypal forces bubbling up from the subconscious in the form of the star. The tears from her eyes represents the holy water. The the cleansing of the damage of the ego, the rubble away from it. And then finally, how happy Rapunzel and the prince were to be together again. It did not matter to them that they were in rags. This teaches us that materialism is not important. Love and bonding and friendship